Once the glue is dry on your sculpture, you're ready to use the paper tape to seal the sides. Before you seal the sides, you want to make sure that your sculpture is going to stand up straight and that you have a flat edge on the bottom of your sculpture. To do the paper edge sides, you're going to need your gesso, you're going to need a small sponge, a bowl of water, a newspaper, and some scissors. The first thing that you want to do is use your paper tape, and you want to cut it into segments that are about 4 inches long. Just enough so that it's going to cover the sides of your sculpture and wrap around just a little bit on the top and the bottom. So it's helpful to get all of your pieces of the paper tape pre-sliced so that they're ready for you to grab when you need them. Once you have your paper tape sliced into, again, about 4 inches, you don't want to cut it more than that because that's going to be wasteful and you may run out of paper tape before the end of the sculpture. The next step is you want to take your sponge, your wet sponge, and you want to get the back of the paper tape wet. Paper tape is just like an envelope or a stamp. It has a sticky side that when it gets wet, it activates. You want to make sure that you get a really nice seal on the edge of your sculpture, wrap it tight across the middle part, and then seal it well on the bottom. This is where you have flat edges. Where you have flat edges, you can just use the paper tape exactly how it is. When you're trying to go around a corner or around a curve, you're going to have to make some alterations on the paper tape so that you can get a nice clean edge. When you go to apply your next strip, you want to make sure that you slightly overlap it over your first strip so that you're not going to end up with a hole in between. You always want to make sure you overlap it and then really make sure that you get a nice seal between your two pieces of paper tape. This will make it so, again, you don't have a hole that's going to expose the inside of your sculpture. Now I'm ready to get a corner. I can't use just a flat piece of paper tape on the corner because it's going to end up getting wrinkled and it's not going to lay flat. So what you need to do where you have corners and curved edges is cut the edge of your paper tape into several strips, probably about 4 strips. You're going to leave the center of the paper tape intact. You're only cutting the strips or fraying the edges of that paper tape. Then go ahead and get it wet as usual. Make sure that you still overlap the side of the paper tape with your previous layer of tape. And then notice that I'm only putting down the 2 tabs that are on one side of the corner. And I'm going to leave the other 2 tabs sticking up. I'm getting it as tight as I can around my edge, making sure it sticks, and then I'm going to fold my paper tape so that it can make the corner, and then the tabs are going to go lay flat in a different direction on top. The tabs on top might overlap the other side of the paper tape. This way you can get a nice clean edge where you have a fold, and it's not going to be, your paper tape isn't going to be wrinkled. I'm going to do the same thing for the other side, and because my sculpture is curved, I'm going to end up cutting tabs for the rest of the paper tape layers that I have to complete sealing the sides of my sculpture. Again, I'm slightly overlapping. I'm only pressing down the tabs before the corner on my sculpture, leaving the other tabs sticking straight up. Making sure that I have a good seal with my other piece of paper tape. And then I'm going to fold my paper tape so it goes around the corner, and then my tabs are going to go in an opposite direction, overlapping the first tabs of that paper tape. That way I get a nice clean edge and my paper tape isn't going to be wrinkled. Again, because the rest of my sculpture is curved, I'm going to have to cut tabs to complete the rest of the sealing of the sides, because if I don't cut the tabs, my paper tape will look wrinkled along the edge. So anytime you have a curved edge or you're trying to get the paper tape across a corner, you're going to need to cut the tabs on the end. Now that the edges of my sculpture are all sealed, all the way around my sculpture, I'm ready to gesso my sculpture. Gesso is basically a primer. It makes it so that your sculpture will be much easier to paint with the acrylic paint. Make sure that you use a piece of newspaper to protect the table because gesso can get messy. I'm going to use a large paintbrush, and I'm just going to paint a thin layer of gesso on the top of my sculpture. I'm going to paint the thin layer of gesso on the sides of my sculpture, and I'm also going to paint a thin layer of gesso on the back side of my sculpture. Remember, you're going to be painting all sides of your sculpture. The only part of the sculpture that you're not painting is the bottom. Sculpture is meant to be viewed from all sides, so we're going to need to paint all sides of our sculpture. Once you're done painting all sides of your sculpture with the gesso, you will need to let it dry before you can start painting the sculpture with the acrylic paint.